Hello there, this is Fiona, host and main GM for What Am I Rolling, a twice-monthly RPG one-shot podcast. This is a bonus Q&A episode to tide us over to the next one-shot, and it is indeed a very special Q&A, as this week I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing Matthew Tyler Jones and David Semark, co-hosts of the Effect podcast and lead designers on the upcoming game, Tales of the Old West. Both Matthew and David are award-winning writers and game designers, having worked on a number of Free League RPG titles, including Alien, Vaesen, and Coriolis. The Effect podcast is a fortnightly magazine show mostly about Year Zero Engine games. And the podcast also has a weekly actual play show, which recently has been sharing some of the team's playtest sessions for Tales of the Old West. Now, Tales of the Old West takes players into the Wild West of the 1870s in a gritty, historic tabletop role-playing game based on Free League's acclaimed Year Zero engine. It's a game about grit, faith, and community, where you work to remake yourself and to find a place in a new society being built from the ground up. If you enjoy TV shows like Deadwood or 1883, or films like 310 to Yuma, or even novels like Lonesome Dove, then this RPG will be right up your street. It was an absolute delight to interview both Matthew and David about their work and what we can expect in Tales of the Old West. I very much enjoyed the quick draw, and I'm excited to see the full RPG when it comes out. The Kickstarter for Tales of the Old West is going live on Tuesday the 3rd of September, so keep an eye out for it. In the meantime, you can download the free quick draw on Drive-Thru RPG and listen to playtest sessions over on the Effect podcast. I'll put a link to the Kickstarter, the Effect podcast, and many, many more things in the episode's show notes. Let's start it straight away. My wonderful guests, can you introduce yourselves? Who are you and what do you do?
Go on, you go first, Dave.
Oh,
I got in first.
You can push in, yeah.
I always go first. I was giving him a chance to go first. Never mind.
You like the sound of your own voice too much, that's what it is.
Well, yeah. Obviously. It's a good voice. Mm-hmm. I'm Matthew Tyler Jones. I am a voice professional. No, I'm not. No, I'm Matthew Tyler Jones, and I am one half of the Effect podcast. Mm-hmm. The other half of the Effect podcast is my cantankerous old wife that you will shortly be hearing. And we started the Effect podcast when, indeed, Dave, my podcasting partner, got married and spent a good part of his wedding breakfast convincing me to back Coriolis from Free League, which was then kickstarting. And so I bought it, I backed it, and then it came on PDF. And then very rarely for me, for role-playing games, I read it from beginning to end and thought it was the best thing ever. And then I phoned up Dave and said, we've got to do a podcast about this great game. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Dave Semark. I'm put the scurrilous rumour to one side. I'm not actually Matt's wife. I'll just say that.
Vicious rumours abound.
Yeah, I'm the other half of the Effect podcast duo. Matthew and I have known each other for more years than we would like to admit.
Definitely a lot more years than I'd like to.
It was me wanting to play Coriolis rather than GM Coriolis that made me badger Matthew to get it, because I wanted him to run it for me. Because normally you get a game that you love, but you have to run it yourself. Mm-hmm. And that led him to saying, oh, let's do a podcast. And then, I remember after the first episode thinking, no one's going to listen to this, and it was pretty ropey, actually.
The first few were pretty ropey.
I think that's always the case, though, with podcast episodes. I say to people, that's the beauty about WAIR, is you could just start anywhere. Maybe not the first 10. It's okay. I don't mind. And people go, no, I did. And I'm like, oh, how did you get here?
No, but we did have some nice compliments, actually, about even those first podcasts, actually. People said we spoke very clearly. Which is always nice.
That's always good for a podcast, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good start, isn't it? Yeah.
So you both then, are you both from then an original, because that's a cool origin story for the Effects podcast. I didn't realize that at all. But were you both into RPGs before then? Had you been playing and running them for such a long time before that?
God, so long.
Yeah, so we first started playing together when I was 11 and Matthew would have been 13.
Oh, wow.
And Matthew and my older brother, who was a year older than Matthew, They had a club, a role-playing club, and I don't quite know why, even to this day, but they let my elder brother's snotty little younger brother join them because I was a couple of years younger than all of them.
Mm-hmm. Seriously, I don't know why. I just want to point out Tony's my friend, actually, but I'm lumbered with his little brother.
He's having this favour for years later. Go, yeah, all right, I'll invite them in. Yeah,
I'll keep him out of trouble for 45 years, and we've been playing ever since. Obviously, as with everybody who plays for a long time, you get peaks and troughs in the amount of time you get to play. And it came back about 10 years ago. We were playing maybe once or twice a year. And I made the calculation of how many games we would play together for the rest of our lives. And it wasn't very many at that rate. So our little group, which is me, Matthew, a friend of ours, Andy, and my brother Tony, we decided to up it. So we try and play every couple of months now. We've been doing that ever since.
We try and play every month, but we end up playing every couple of months.
Right. Yeah, the ideal is there, but the reality is slightly different, as always.
Yeah, and as you get older, life takes you in different directions. So we all live. My brother and I live quite close, but Matthew lives quite a way south, and Andy lives quite a way north. So it's but it's great. And I think a bit more about me. I hadn't always harboured the ambition to be a game designer and writer, but when we first started the podcast, I'd had this like fantasy trajectory, this mad idea that I know what, let's go and see the Free League guys. We'll go to Sweden and interview them and get to know them, and they'll get to like us, and they'll give us a little bit of work, and then they'll give us a bit more work, and then we'll become professional writers. And lo and behold, it just bloody happened.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is bonkers.
I want to point out that I said that does not happen very clearly.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a podcasting veteran. I'd already been on another podcast. And we got to talk to the stars of Firefly and stuff like that. But this was a ridiculous fantasy. Nobody goes to Sweden to do an interview. There is a thing like Zoom. But no, there we were in Sweden. There they were buying us drinks.
Wild.
And also I want to point out it's only half true that it's happened, because Dave has now retired from his day job and is writing full time.
Oh, well done. Congrats.
Says he is. There's probably quite a lot of game playing as well, I imagine, on the video games and stuff like that.
Yeah. Got to fill those hours with research. That's how I see it. Yeah.
I still have a proper job with proper compensation. I'm not risking it all on writing games.
My compensation is a lot lower than Matthew's. As anyone who's worked in the industry knows that you're not going to make $1 million, but that's fine. But yeah, so through that we got to work on Alien back in 2019. Matthew and I did the demo scenarios for Alien for UK Games Expo just as it was being announced. Those were basically turned into Hope's Last Day, which is as Free League call it, the fan favourite. Intro scenario in the core book. Yeah, I know. So that's brilliant. And so then I got to work on Alien, on basically everything from Alien after that, to quite a big contribution, sort of behind the scenes, with Drew Gasker writing most of it, but then me coming in as a development editor and a writer to do some extra stuff to tweak the scenarios and that kind of thing. And then I got to do Building Better Worlds with Drew Gasker, both as the co-lead writers. But then I wrote I was given all the gaming side of it, all the campaign side of it, which is a bigger proportion of the book. So I got to write, nearly 2/3 of it. And then it only went and won the awards at UK Games Expo. And then it won Gold Award at Emmys last week, which is superb. I mean, how lucky have I been to be able to work on that line?
It definitely is that sort of thing going, I've set this goal, I will get that goal. And then you're like, it has happened. I was like, what?
No, that never happened.
that shouldn't happen. I think we're all very British about this, going, there's the goal, but no, not for us.
No, exactly, yeah. All I need now is the money, and the fame. Yeah, that's all I need now, So
step one done.
Yeah, exactly.
Step four, profit. That's how it works.
That is a very interesting thing what you've just said there about it maybe being a British habit that we may have goals, but we firmly put ourselves in the position that they're not achievable. Because I'm reminded of who's the fella? Ken Hoffman. But years and years ago, in the early days of gaming, somebody turned up at the offices of Chaosium and said, I've edited your it was one of the RuneQuest books. I've edited, here are my notes. And he was only 12 at the time.
Wow.
And they then gave him a job, and his name is on a bunch of credits, a number of books. And then he went on and started bloody LinkedIn. And so now he's a blooming millionaire.
That's amazing. What a great story.
And I remember being 12 around the same time as that. And we were treating the authors of these books as, sort of sages from America, wise old men, which actually, as it turns out, Greg Stafford probably was a wise old man, middle-aged or even young middle-aged, old beyond his years. I never considered that one of the people that got their names in the credits on the front of that book was 12, like me, and actually anybody could write role-playing games as long as you put the work in and start putting one word behind it.
Yeah.
Well, head behind the others. We could all be creating this stuff.
That's where you're going wrong, Matthew. You're putting the words behind the ones before it.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's all the words, but in the wrong order. That's what's happening.
I've got all the letters, as Dave, who has edited my all the letters are there. But not necessarily in the right place.
But I do think it's true because, I've just been to my first Gen Con, and I know you've been to a whole range of RPG cons as well. It actually feels very small. Again, you put in the hard work. You guys were running the demos, obviously talking to Free League and stuff like that. And same thing on my side as well. But it's actually quite a small world and quite a small scene when you think about it. And I think even smaller, with people who go, wait, I've played this game, or I've got some information that's good critique rather than criticism. I can just go and talk to them and talk about this feedback and show this passion for game design. And it's easily in a world now, obviously, where everything is connected and it's easy to send an email and stuff. It's actually really easy to do. And so I like you said, the fact that they're not distant, I'll never be this writer, I'll never meet them. You possibly could, because if you go to the right conventions and you work in the same field and are passionate about it, more often than not you will be like, holy shit, that's them across the room, and just taking those chances to do it.
And just go and say hello.
I've got to talk about a moment actually at UK Games Expo this year, which was it was
bonkers, is what it was.
It was great. I was kind of a witness and instigator to this moment, but it was amazing to see. So I was having a conversation with one of Free League's customers at the Free League table, and I was saying, so Dave over there, he'll sign your Building Better Worlds for you if you want to buy it, because, he wrote a good chunk of it. And the bloke standing next to the bloke I was talking to, suddenly his eyes lit up like Dave was Taylor Swift or somebody.
I've never seen them in the same room, so
I'm often confused with Taylor Swift. It's a regular problem for me.
You're Dave Semark. And Dave said, yes, I am.
And I was like, who? Me?
Me.
Yeah, that was very, very strange. The first person who came back and went, oh, wow, it's great to see you. I love your stuff.
Oh.
It's like, oh, my God, it was so strange.
But you're right. It's it's quite a big community, bigger than it was when we were blooming 12, Dave.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And if only we'd known.
That dream, that you could really be high up now if you'd started
we'd all be running LinkedIn now.
Yeah, we'd all be getting fired from Wizards of the Coast right now.
Everyone's bio's changing. Yeah,
but it's a small community, and you can build a role in it just with a bit of gumption. I think that's a good lesson to all of your listeners, Fiona.
But also, as you were saying, being passionate about it, because I've interviewed loads of people on the show and been excited about their games, because I've always find games really interesting, and of course we'll get to Tales of the Old West in a second. But one thing I find interesting, and I do think it's particularly UK game designers, there's maybe just a little bit of I've done the game, I don't want to promote it. I'll come and talk about it, but then when I get excited about it, I can see sometimes there's a little dying inside where I go, oh no. And it's just, I think it's just because it's very hard to be your own hype person in the day of social media and all that sort of thing. It's delightful to have people who are passionate about games and obviously a range of games. I know you guys, like you said, you sort of started off with Free League and then Coriolis going all the way through to Alien, all that sort of thing. So it's fun to talk to people who love games as much as I do, and also obviously now have started writing their own system and are passionate about it and are excited to talk about it, because sometimes you're like, oh no, they're tired, it's okay, I just want to interview you about your game, I promise.
It's true though, I always feel a little bit of trepidation coming onto this kind of interview, which is why I like to let Matthew go first, because Matthew loves chatting and he's very good at it. And it's like when we do an interview for our podcast, I let Matthew take the lion's share of the work because he's just really good at it. He's our version of Michael Parkinson, whereas I'm not a very good chat show host. It takes me a little while to get into this to the feel of it, and obviously chatting today. I mean, you made us feel at ease straight away, which is great. But often it takes me a little while to get in and get over that reservation. And we were on. I'm going to forget the name of it now.
What is role playing podcast?
What is role playing? Yeah, with Chris
Beyond Cataclysm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we'd had this lovely conversation, and then at the end he said, "Okay, Dave, tell me about Tales of the Old West." And I kind of froze. It's like, I don't know what to say. And then Matthew, thank God, rescued me. Yeah. But it was like you say, I'm terrible at blowing my own trumpet. I feel a bit bad about it almost.
Yeah.
I'm getting less worried about it, I guess, as I get older, but still.
You've got to be better at blowing your own trumpet. Because I'll talk any old bollocks about anything, though. So
I also think it's a lot easier if there's two of you. Sometimes when it's a one-on-one, it does get into. I know you said Parkinson just said, but it does feel like a bit like maybe News Night-esque and Kirsty Walk, ready to go. So which is not the case as well. But let's talk about Tales from the Old West. So for those people who aren't familiar with your work, what is Tales of the Old West, and how does it stand out to other RPGs that are currently out there?
Right, so Tales of the Old West, I have to go a little back into RPG history.
Yes,
here.
please.
I'm going to keep it short because Dave has heard this before and frankly he was bored the first time. But I have a theory.
Yes.
That is D&D and RuneQuest and all those old early role-playing games are all Westerns dressed up with swords and dragons. But what characters do in those things is they go off and plunder some foreign land, bring back their treasure, and particularly when they've killed the mayor of town A, they move over to town B, and there they become famous lawmen. And that's actually kind of how the West happened. Lots of plundering other people, lots of leaving your reputation behind in one town and going on to the next town. And that feels to me how D&D and RuneQuest to a degree all played. So it's always struck me as strange that Western-themed role-playing games haven't been a bigger success. And we can point to some Deadlands, depending on how you like to pronounce it, has had a great and storied history in more than one version. But of course, that's not just a Western. That is an alternate Western in a world where there are vampires and undead,
supernatural,
and dark magics.
Yeah.
And Dave and I have long, we enjoy. I'm going to split this into two, Dave. You enjoy the history of the West, and I enjoy the mythology of the West. The mythology not being one with dragons and vampires and stuff, but the sort of the building of the American myth of the cowboy and the West and the lawlessness and bringing law into town and doing the right thing and all that sort of stuff. And so we wanted to create a game that reflects that because there's really, really, really good role-playing in Westerns. There's great opportunities. Dave, I love it. I've just got to compliment Dave here. Excuse me, Fiona.
Yes, please.
Dave wrote a post on our Facebook page today where I had no idea why he did it, frankly. That surprised me probably as much as it surprised him. Dave put a link to a YouTube scene out of the movie Appaloosa, which has got Viggo Mortensen in it, I think.
Yeah, and Ed Harris.
That's it, yeah. And he said, "Oh, just watch this." And of course, the problem is I can't watch this now without seeing it through the rules of Tales of the Old West. And I won't bore you with how he breaks it down, but he breaks it down as though it was an encounter in Tales of the Old West. And it works, damn it. It works. And we tried really hard to be able to do that thing that's gritty and realistic. And Dave likes to say authentic, but I keep slapping him around the head until he shuts up. But also does that thing about how Western stories are constructed. I would say we've created that. We saw the opportunity to do that in Free League's Year Zero engine.
Yes.
Yep.
And we have adapted that over, it must be coming up to 6 years now, Dave.
Yeah.
And we're now in a position where we think we can share it with other people.
That's so exciting. And yeah, because I know you get listed loads of inspirations for what is from different sort of medias and books and stuff like that. And for me, I actually really recently started playing Red Dead Redemption, and it's one of my favorite games of all time, the first one. And I've only just started playing the second one, and it is just. God, the vibes of that game are just amazing. Just like that, you could be the lawless person in town, done for murder, etc., or you could be building the community. And I really enjoyed that when I was reading through the quick start. Is that you make this about it is about communities on the edge of almost like chaotic wilderness and lawlessness, and so you could make those choices. And I really felt, like you said, I was thinking about it when I was playing the game last night. I was like, oh yeah, I can definitely see the rule. Like I could see what you were trying to do with the Year Zero engine on that front. So, and you had this really interesting conversation about faith as well, because that is such a big part in Westerns, and certainly in America in general, faith is such a big part. And you don't really see discussions about it in, say, traditional D&D games, other than they are a pantheon that gives people power, etc. And here, faith, as you said, it's not necessarily about a particular religion, but it's more about motivation or drive. You have faith in yourself, and that comes across in so many ways. I can imagine so many bits where they're about to do a duel, and they can just see them thinking about what drives them forward, why they need to live in this moment and succeed. I just thought that was, instantly I was like, I see this in the video game I'm playing, I see this in the book. So I definitely can understand, in any bit of media, if you've made a game that can showcase that, I mean, kudos. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, credit where credit's due. The idea of using faith as the sort of the driving force behind the push mechanic in the game was, I'd like to say mine, but it wasn't. It was Matthew's. But we had quite a lot of conversations about it, and it's changed quite a few times over the years. Mm-hmm. And as you say, Fiona, faith as a word has a religious connotation. As you say, in the sort of the 19th century America, everyone probably has some faith in a god of some sort, or the spirits, or their ancestors, or whatever it might be. But for us, we didn't want that to get in the way of people enjoying the game. So if you don't want to play a character who is a religious character, as you said, you don't have to. Your faith can be anything you please. So it can be your faith in your ability to handle your gun, faith in your ability to talk your way out of situations. It could be faith in your family or your friends. My character in the playtests, his faith is that a man's place is in the saddle, because he's a horseman and he's a horse rancher. And so it could be anything you like, but then you get a number of faith points, and that helps you spend those to push your role. You can also spend them to deal with trouble. And I won't go into too much detail about how that works. But if you push your roll and you end up with ones on particular dice that we call trouble dice, they're going to cause you trouble. And the more ones you've got, the worse that trouble is going to be. But you can then use your faith, if you've got any points left, to buy off some of that trouble and make it a little bit less troublesome. But yeah, so we had a lot of conversation about faith, and I feel that we've got the mechanic pretty much right now. It seems to be working really well in playtests.
Yes, the concept of faith has stayed throughout the game. It was almost one of the first things I said to Dave, it's got to have faith in it. Yeah. But the mechanics, we worked very hard, and we've gone through a number of iterations.
Yeah.
And I think particularly, and this one, I will credit Dave with this one. So Dave had the idea that, we'd built in the trouble dice. Originally, we had started with the free league system of you get a skull on a stat or on your equipment, then your gun may break or your stat may go,
get damaged. Yeah.
So that's how we'd started. But we, over time, have moved to that. So now we have this pool of faith points that get depleted. At one point, I was trying to work out how should this work, and I ran a play test with a group locally to me where you never knew how many faith points you were going to spend when you pushed your dice, because all the ones you got would cost a point of faith.
Yeah.
So some pushes you may get for free, some may cost you a lot of time. And I really quite liked it, but my players sure as hell didn't like it. So Dave had this idea then that, it costs a point of faith, but then when you roll your trouble, you can buy trouble dice for extra points if you've got them. That has everything that was good about my, faith having a pushed roll having a varying cost. But you've got more choice about whether you want to pay the extra for those things or whether you'll take the hit.
Take the risk. Yeah.
So that, again, when one then looks at Westerns now, and I think I have the same problem as Dave, is all the time I'm watching a Western now, I'm going, he's spent a few faith points on that one.
To couple that then with the way you do the health system, because usually in a free league, usually it's like, this plus this, that's your health. But this time your health is directly to your stats, so the 4 stats. And each time you get damage, it reduces that dice pool. And then coupled with the trouble dice, instead of having it something that's separate, as again, something else in free league games where you'd have maybe separate pools of dice, you combined the two to the point where you could be rolling all trouble dice. And I really like that because it made me think of you're running out of luck, you're running out of time. So no matter what you do, it's going to have significantly more risk. And just to see that sort of visually, it's something I really like. This is the sort of game, and the same with quite a lot of free league games, I always find is that for me, it benefits like rolling physically rather than using like an online thing, just because, or just being able to show, if it has a dice roller, to show the actual different kinds of dice you have, because then you'd be like, oh no, I've got 2 trouble, I've rolled 2 ones, and then being able to spend it, and I don't have enough faith, but just that increased risk. Again, something about that just makes me go, oh yes, because you can actually see that you are literally like on your last. Could be the last thing you do because of all the trouble stuff you get from it, and especially because you guys you've got tables as well for the different kinds of trouble you can have depending on what is occurring.
Yeah, and we very much wanted to give as much player choice in managing their faith as we could, and we also. One of the things we loved going back to Coriolis was the push mechanic in Coriolis, where you pray, you say a prayer to the icons, and the GM gets a darkness point. And one of the things we really loved about that is it generated, just from the mechanics themselves, the pressure or the opportunity for players to roleplay. And it really gets you into the religious look and feel of Coriolis. And you'll go to a chapel to pray before you get involved in some trouble, if you've got the time. All this kind of stuff. Loved it. So we wanted to try and make faith have a similar impact on the players in Tales of the Old West. So you've got more choice over how you use your faith, but also you can earn it. And to earn it, you can do a variety of different things. There's a list in the rule book about the kind of things you can do that take an action, but a lot of them will take a shift. So they'll take several hours, and it might be that you're grooming your horse, or you spend the time to clean your gun, or you spend a night in bed with your lover. Those kind of things. And it for us, it really emulates the moment in the movie where Clint Eastwood knows there's a gunfight coming the following morning, and that night he's preparing himself for that deadly moment. And he is cleaning his gun. He is having a last whiskey with his best friend. And we want to try and emulate that in Tales of the Old West to make people role play it. And it seems to work really well. I'm very pleased with how that seems to play out.
Yeah. And, there are whole films based on those moments. So if you look at High Noon or 3:10 to Yuma, it's all about, there's a big gunfight coming up. I've got to make my peace with the world. And so, we feel that this system really captures that. And as Dave says, yes, obviously going to church will earn you a faith point. That's not the only way of doing it. Riding out into the countryside. One of Dave and my favourite books is Lonesome Dove, which the TV show filmy thing isn't great actually about it, but the book is brilliant. And I like to call it a book about how men are actually a bit crap when it comes to relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they can be very competent at all the cowboy type stuff, but they kind of miss the point all the way through. There's one, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm going to spoil it. One of the characters in Lonesome Dove is the son of the other one. And we all know it, but they don't.
They sort of do, but they deny it to themselves.
Yeah. So the audience knows.
Yeah. The father obviously kind of knows it, but absolutely denies it. And the son doesn't really find out, I think, until the end of the book. But I can't remember even whether he finds out when his father's still alive. So, whereas the women, of course, all the women in the book, they know it all as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, women like, it's obvious.
Exactly what's going on. Yeah, exactly.
It's just coming back to Faith. One of the main characters there, every time he's getting a bit tense and things aren't going well, he just goes off for a ride.
On his own, yeah.
And people go, where's the captain or whatever?
Yeah.
And then he comes back again and he's earned himself a point of faith then, because things go his way from it.
Yeah.
It's nice that, again, it is rewarding people for leaning into the vibes, leaning into that sort of thing with the role play. And I think because rather than just being like mechanical, okay, we'll rest now, and what are you doing? I was like, I don't know, drinking in the tavern or whatever. And you're like, well, okay, a point. But like encouraging people to really think and reflect on, like you said, like going out for a ride and stuff like that. Again, just imagining it again, because I played Red Dead Redemption, just riding for ages, thinking about the music, seeing the vastness of the plains, and just being at one with that sort of scenery as the sun is setting. Absolutely, just being able to describe it and giving the players, like you said, that little chance to contribute and role play and just give it a little description. So I feel like certainly, obviously, I know D&D doesn't necessarily encourage that straight off, but I feel like games such as this and sort of freely games in general can do that very easily and get people actively engaged, so they go from player to co-GM to hopefully GM. That's the sort of get them encouraging them to talk about these things.
Yeah, absolutely. But it helps when you get a real mechanical reward for it. It encourages people to do that, I think.
Absolutely.
So I used to say of Coriolis that I've played, or Dave and I have both been in a campaign that lasted about 30 years of Pendragon, where we are playing at Dave, I don't know whether you ever converted to Christianity, but my character and family line converted to Christianity quite early in the thing. So we are Christian knights. Not once in 30 years of gaming did I think my character ever say, I'm going to go to church.
No.
But we'd had this thing in Coriolis where, because of the mechanic, because of the reward, remember, you pray to the right icon, you get +2 dice when you push your roll.
And also because the game is so very deadly, that those little advantages can make all the difference when it comes to the conflict.
The first thing we do is find the church. There's a fabulous game which is actually recorded on one of our podcasts, where I dumped Dave and his fellow players on a prison planet with absolutely nothing other than what Dave could salvage from the podule that had dropped him on this planet. And there were some cannibals coming to basically harvest them from the landing zone where all these prisoners get.
This is Coriolis, by the way, not Tales from the Old West.
I mean, I'm ready for the sci-fi expansion of Tales from the Old West. That's what I was waiting for, some sort of secret hidden.
And Dave and his brother was one of the other players. They said, right, okay, take a moment to pray before they get here. And they prayed, and then brilliantly his brother jumped off a rock and with the shiv that David made and stabbed one of the cannibals in the eye with a critical hit because he pushed his roll with those extra dice, and God, the whole thing was saved.
Unusually, the plan worked, basically. Yeah,
yeah. Like, wow, and it's because of this one tip that you did beforehand.
So we wanted to have that feeling in the Old West, and I think we've got it. So we're really pleased.
And the other thing, again, which is something I was very pleased to see, is that you sort of acknowledge that obviously the Old West, there's certain problematic parts when we look back at it now, and not all of it is like gun-ho, like exciting, like a nostalgia, so to speak. But it was nice that from my point of view, I appreciate in the quick start or the quick draw, you don't necessarily have character creation yet, but that you sort of acknowledging that obviously there's so many different people, lineages, and different genders and stuff, which have all had, maybe what's the word, discriminated against and all that sort of thing. And acknowledging that, you've done as good a service as to be like, this is, we try to make it sensitively, and you can play anyone, you can be anyone, and it doesn't matter. It's okay not to be too historically accurate. Like you could be anyone. You could be a whole band of female presenting people and take over whatever town you want. It's as long as you're treating that sensitively. And I very much appreciated that, because that was quite early on at the beginning. Because there's definitely something that I can imagine people go up, but this is not great. Like even in, again, I keep going back to the video game, I know, but Red Dead Redemption, all the NPCs I've met are all men. The women are hidden away from me, and I'm like, where are the women? I wish to talk to them. What, are they okay?
This kind of plays into my historian side of the me and Matt equation, like as Matt was saying, he's sort of the more the mythology side of it. Right from the start, I was very clear that I wanted this to be as representative of the actual history as we could make it, and still make it fun. Every part of history has got its shit bits.
Yeah.
Every part of the world has got its bad bits where people are treating people very badly, and the West has that as anywhere else does, and potentially in spades in some senses. So I wanted to reflect that. I wanted not to hide away from it. We need to respect it, but not revel in it.
No.
I certainly don't want to come across as sounding a bit preachy. And the aim of the game isn't to educate people at all.
No.
But, I hope that we've treated it sensitively enough. I hope that what we've done. So obviously we expand on these issues in the core book. I think that that's been drafted pretty well, pretty respectfully. I think that works quite well, with the intention of allowing people to explore some of this stuff. So if you want to play a Native American, but you're not of Native American heritage, I hope we've given you enough information to treat that character with some respect and try and actually understand a bit about what that person's life would have been like.
Yeah.
Not just a horse riding, tomahawk wielding bad guy.
Yeah.
Which a lot of the mythology would have presented you as.
It does definitely feel like a jumping off point for you to go and do your own research, as well as obviously here's a good understanding about it. Again, not treating people as stereotypes, but at the same time, go and look up and see what, find out stories and explore that sort of thing. I'm a big fan of that as well.
If what we've done encourages people to go and do a bit of their own reading and learn a bit more about it, then fabulous. I'll be delighted.
And we have a reading list. There is a reading list in the main rule book, and there will be an expanded reading list by the time we finish the Kickstarter.
I was going to say. Constant research. Yeah.
One of the things, of course, that our research has told us is that, and here, the mythology has to take a hit. The mythology of the American West, made by Hollywood, particularly the early, because Westerns are some of the earliest films that were ever made, because they built Hollywood in a place where there used to be a bunch of cowboys. So they had a whole swathe of stunt riders ready to do these things.
Yeah.
So from the earliest days of cinema right up until really only the last few decades, there has been a very white industrial production of the Western mythology. So, the early decades of films, really up until the last couple of decades, when you see a bunch of cowboys, they will all be white. Whereas historically speaking, this lowly paid job of cowhands was actually taken up by an incredibly diverse range of people.
Yeah.
Emancipated slaves, Mexicans. Bass Reeves is one of the great stories of law. He was taught to shoot by his owner as a slave. He wasn't taught to read. His owner didn't want him to do that, but he wanted him to shoot. So Bass Reeves then escapes from his owner, runs off into Indian country, modern-day Oklahoma, then starts working as an assistant to marshal, becomes a policeman in Oklahoma City, I think, in his later years. But then the racialization of the American West happens, and they go, well, we can't have a black man as a policeman. And, they get rid of his job. And then the community pay him to be a policeman.
Amazing.
Because he's so respected by the mixed community. That, I think, the treatment of Reeves in his later life, when people say, well, we don't want black policemen, that's not the thing we want to do. That is the thing at fault for the way we now think of all of the West being exclusively white. So, if we can use this book to tell stories like that,
all the better. Yeah, exactly.
Agreed.
But of course, it's also why lots of other Western games like to go, all right, let's put some vampires in here.
I was going to say, this feels like the most accurate. Vanilla is not the word I want to use, because that feels like it's a negative thing. But like you said, Deadlands is got supernatural. Orbs for Blues is sad cowboys but in space. You're like, what about just the Western RPGs? I'm sure there are ones out there, but you're right. I do feel like a lot of times when you come up to them, or certainly more recent games, they do have to have another element of something in it to make it palatable. I don't know.
I think also there's a treatment of some of those games that are more cut and dry Westerns without the tentacles and the aliens. They're presented in a slightly less realistic way. The artwork is a bit more dime novel or a bit more cartoony, which kind of maybe takes some of the edge off. This is presenting something that isn't really real.
Yeah,
it's a Wild West, and you can flip your gun around your finger and shoot people, but it's fine. Nobody really gets hurt, kind of thing.
Yes.
Whereas we wanted to make the game that was, to use the word that is almost impossible to pronounce, very similitudinous.
Ooh. This is a word I've taught Dave to use instead of authentic.
I wrote it down so I could read it.
Pronunciation guides, amazing.
Exactly. To try and emulate the look and feel of the West. We can't make it authentic. We can't recreate it. But we're trying to create it well enough that it feels a bit like you might be there. And it allows you to explore some of those stories in a way that hopefully will be a lot of fun.
This has been in development for a very long time. So this question is probably a very mean question, so feel free not to answer it. But has there been any part of the process, and I know this applies to all of the game writing and stuff as well, but has there been part of the process which you've gone, this is a massive obstacle. It's something that you hate doing, even though it's part of the process. And it's something that you have to come across if you're going to do anything with game design for you guys.
Working with Matthew.
Well, I mean, I thought that was an unspoken rule. So
now you get to go first. We have had, we've had some pretty argumentative bits, and there has to be compromise in the end. And compromise is doing what I said originally. No.
What tends to happen is we have an argument over some kind of text medium on Discord or whatever, and it can get a bit heated. And then when we actually talk to each other and look at each other, even if it's over just on a screen, it's all fine. And then I explain it to Matthew and he goes, oh yeah, good point, and agrees with me.
No, it very rarely happens. I explain it to Dave and he says good point and agrees with me. I think you'll find that's the way it normally plays.
It's either or. Yeah, so actually being able to verbally talk you through your problems is always so much better than reading between the walls of text, and you're like, oh, okay, let's have a chat about it. The
one phrase I've learned to hate of Matthew's, which he hasn't said for a very long time now, is, this is a hill I'm going to die on. and there have been times where I've read that and I've thought, fine, I'm happy to kill you there, frankly.
Bury you. Then I guess on the flip side then of that, is there a part of this game design process as you've been making Tales of the Old West that you guys have really, really enjoyed doing? Like it is something that brings you joy when it comes to this part of the design process?
Playtesting. I mean, actually, it's taken 6 years because we don't get together enough to playtest it. So we don't get to do a session every month because traditionally our group, we each run a game. So, and there's 4 of us in it. So, even if we met every month, we'd be playing Tales of the Old West every 4 months.
Yeah.
You and your brother, then, because you handed over to him to co-GM, ran a more weekly game, didn't you, Dave?
We've got a very long-running playtest, which I started GMing, and then I wanted to play as a character. So my brother took over, and we play that about once a month now. But for a long time, for probably 2 years, we played it every week pretty much.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting that actually out of my little like midweek group here at home, most of them like Toto, Tales of the Old West, and it's their favourite game.
Oh.
Well, it might be down to the fact of the group we are and how evil we are and how much Tony lets us get away with. Might be something to do with it.
Sure.
Just delighted that everyone still wants to play the game and is absolutely loving it.
Yeah, and is able to give you that feedback.
Yeah, these guys are playing it like D&D. No, I said D&D was like a Western. These guys will just burn a building down with everybody inside it rather than actually face the consequences of what they're doing.
I don't think we've ever done that. But we are pretty bad people. So one of the things that we are really keen on in the campaign version of the game is your town and the community where you live, or where you might live just outside if you're a rancher or a farmer. But it's the focus of your community. And we've done quite a lot of rules about how you can, as a player, help the town. If you behave in a way that is supportive of the town, or you sacrifice something to try and help the town, you will earn extra points, what we call settlement points, which are like experience for the town itself.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That you can then use to buy extra amenities to make the town grow more quickly and grow in the right way. If you're not so friendly with the town and you're just scavenging it or you're exploiting it, then your town isn't going to grow so quickly. When you need the community to help you, they're not going to be there. So it's a really important part of it. So coming back to the playtests, the town we have there, we love the town because, we are very supportive of the town. We just don't like everybody else in it pretty much.
Fair enough.
Visitors to the town, beware. If you step out of line, you won't leave ever. But
and the thing that Tony as GM lets you get away with is doing all the terrible things you do, as far as I can see, without witnesses, because we do have a reputation score as well.
We do, yeah.
It should be proving that these people are terrible, terrible people. But no. They always manage to present a lovely face to the town while actually, killing the mayor behind his back or poisoning his wife or whatever it is.
But the leader of our group is the local parish priest.
Oh, amazing.
And on the fame thing, he is a pillar of the community. You can't get better on your reputation than a pillar of the community. Mm-hmm. And he's working hard to keep it there.
Yeah.
So we have these things as well. So we have a fame score, and that is basically how well known you are. It doesn't reflect whether that's a positive or a negative fame. Mm-hmm. It's just how well known you are. Mm-hmm. And then your reputation, which is a bigger table, 6x6 table. Where you are on that table determines what the people think of you. Mm. And you can improve your fame, your reputation, of course, and your fame. If you do something really nasty in front of lots of people, your reputation is going to suffer. Mm-hmm. So again, it's quite important if you care about the town, about how you behave and how you present yourself.
How you present yourself, absolutely. And yeah, I was going to say, you've got some great tables. I was going to say, like, the critical injuries table definitely was one of my favourite ones, because you talk about this idea of cold shots, of that idea of, like, indicating, I want to shoot the hand, etc. And I just thought that was just a really cool idea of, like, okay, you're going to roll on the critical injury table, you happen to get it, but you don't need to worry about, like, that initial tens or whatever, because, like, you've already called where it's going to be. It is going to be the lower dice, so just roll a d6. And I just thought that was nice, because sometimes I found, like, with those critical injury tables, it's like, all right, you've called something, like, great, you rolled it, and you go, okay, you've actually done something completely different.
Yes.
So I really quite liked how the cold shot thing, again, it makes it very cool. It's very difficult to do. You -3 to your dice pool, but if it goes off and you are give a critical injury, it feels so cinematic as well, and it does exactly what the player wanted to do. So I just thought that was really interesting, because I'd never seen a critical injury table like that was separated into like lower leg, upper leg, that sort of thing, and then no matter what the injury was, it was still in what the player said. So it's just that building on rather than going, nope, this is what happens instead.
Yeah, this is something that we developed quite a long time ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago maybe, and it hasn't changed very much since. Mm-hmm. Particularly from an idea that I had around exactly that. We want to be able to shoot the gun out of somebody's hand, but what if you score a critical? The critical tables traditionally for free league games obviously do it by location, but it's kind of randomly set through the 66 or 36 options. Yeah, so we've had that for a long time. And in this game, it's the units die you've got to worry about. A 1 on a units die, even if it's a 6, which is on the 10s die, which is a headshot, it's just going to wing you. It's not going to be bad. Mm-hmm. You get a 6 on that units die, and it's a headshot, a 6, then you're going to be killed in one go. So, worry about the units dice more than the 10s dice in this game.
Yeah, I think bar the lower leg, everything has like this is a fatal thing right at the end. Like I said, the higher up you go on that units dice, the worse it is. And I quite like that, because, yes, like you said, it was all very randomly put in together. So you'd be like, oh, I think I've broken a rib. That could be bad. Yes, it is, rather than, I don't know, it's just a way, like you said, the categorization for it, I just thought was just, again, I'd not seen that before, so I was just like, thought that was really good.
There's one example where in one of the playtests, the crew were murdering somebody. It's a common theme here.
In his town, we're good guys. In the campaign,
in your town, you're good. Yeah, right, okay, right.
I was the GM on this occasion, so my character was not involved.
Okay.
And they snuck into their bedroom, this man and his wife, and they tried to kill them both. And they got a crit, but they didn't do a cold shot. They got a crit on the woman, the wife, and rolled on the crit table. And they said they'd snuck up and they're going to try and hit her in the head. And the crit table said broken ankle or something. And so it remains a running joke in our group still. This is years ago. That, I can try and hit somebody in the head when they're in bed, but actually I'll break their ankle instead. But so I think the cold shot and the table being split as the way it is can help mitigate that a bit.
Agreed.
It was really good a couple of weeks ago to see a kind of recommendation for the quick start, which I'm sure you'll put a link in the show notes.
Of course, yeah.
Absolutely free quick start. 66 pages of goodness.
Yeah.
But somebody was posting about it in Catalonian, which was great, because I was going, a foreign language. It's not Spanish. I recognize this. This is Catalonian. Anyway, so then I had to translate it, of course, and it says, if you like Free League, this is a great game. And it says, warning, the crit table will smoke you. which I thought...
Yes, that's going to be back you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, it's good to see that it's getting played around the world as well, and recommended in languages other than English.
That's so cool. So if you were going to advise folks, obviously, I know we're going to talk about where you can go and support the crowdfunding and stuff like that. But if somebody was going to pick up this game, either as a GM or a player, what's your sort of big bit of advice for either running or playing in Tales from the Old West?
That's a good question.
That's a lovely question. I've got some answers, Dave, but I'll let you go first.
Go on, no, you go first while I think of something.
Play with Matthew?
Right, okay, so... For your GM, it's worth pointing out that one of our founding principles is we wanted it to be deadly. So the idea is everybody carries a gun, but if you look at the movies, they don't take the gun out. They're playing an hour's worth of movie without taking their guns out because they don't want to, because they know that when the guns are drawn, people die.
Yeah.
So it is not the sort of game like D&D where you can come running into battle and there's every chance that the whole party is going to survive. So it is deadly, and it's important, I think, that GMs explain that to their group, particularly if they're coming from a game like D&D.
Yeah, agreed.
And also, as a GM, you do have a choice about where you spend those extra successes. So you, and I'm not saying where you should, but I'm reminding you that you have a choice. Do I spend that extra success on a crit, which can easily kill somebody? And Dave, we killed your brother in a very similar way.
We did.
We killed his character, I should say.
Yeah, I was going to say clarification quickly.
Or you can just give them extra stat damage, and extra stat damage is, it knocks them out of the fight, but it doesn't have any lasting effect. A few hours rest and you get it back. So just remember as a GM to think about the deadliness of the game. I'd encourage you to keep it deadly, but you know your table better than us.
And I think there's a moment as well as a GM. You need to, when you got the opportunity to crit a player, you don't always crit them if the moment is a really mundane one. But if the moment is the culmination of some narrative arc, then it's worth putting that risk on the player. And yeah, you roll the 2d6, and if you roll 66 or a 6 on the units die, that player's in deep, deep trouble. That player character is. And it's great. I think that really helps drive player behavior. And so, yeah, to just kind of like bookend Matthew's point, as a GM, warn your players it's deadly, but don't be frightened of player death at the right moment. And
I think from a player's point of view, one of the things that some people say as a criticism of Coriolis, but we love it, is the term that, at least in our podcast, has been called crit farming, where, yes, I'll push the roll. I need to get some extra dice because I really want to do a crit on this person.
Yes,
and indeed, in later year zero games, they gave you less of a choice about whether you crit or not. Normally, you have to deplete their hit points or whatever, or strength or whatever it is, until they're broken, and then you roll a crit at the end of that. Whereas because I feel it fits in with the genre, the cool shots and everything is all part of that as well. We wanted people to be able to crit farm, to get that extra success and maybe do critical damage. So if you want to end a fight quickly, players, crit farm.
Yeah. I think it's also really thematically appropriate to the Wild West.
Yes.
So you get the crit farming thing in Coriolis, which is a science fiction, slightly unusual kind of culture and setting that people perhaps don't immediately relate to in the way that they might relate to an Old West scene in a bar. But if you get into a fight in the Old West, putting the other guy down as quickly as possible is the best way to stay alive. And so, you want to crit farm, you want to get a hit. I don't like the phrase crit farm, and I don't think we should use it because it gives the wrong feel.
I know what you mean, though, yeah.
But you're going to go for the heart, or you're going to go for the head when you're trying to shoot somebody, or you hit a vulnerable spot. But also, if you get hit and you don't get put down, you take damage to your stats, and then your dice pool gets smaller. Once you get a step ahead in a fight, you've got the you've got the advantage in winning that fight. You've got the upper hand,
haven't you? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
But I think the other advice, kind of in relation to that, because if you are crit farming, you may well be pushing your rolls more often.
Yes.
Make sure that you take the time to build up your faith.
Faith, absolutely.
You get 4 points when you start a new story, but you want to, the first things you should be doing, and I think this is only... in playtesting has only come to me really
in the last session, really.
In the last session, where I said at the beginning of the session, you know what we've been doing wrong? We always start thinking about faith when we're getting low on faith. Actually, what we should do is build it up at the beginning. And then it's those beginnings, the beginning of the movie, where you might be riding out on the range as an opening scene. Yeah. And in fact, some of the activities you might do to earn yourself a faith point could be great ways in for the GM to, then bring in encounters, you're riding back, or you're having a lovely meal with friends or whatever it is, that then trigger the adventure. So earn faith, work hard at earning faith as early as you can.
Matthew, David, we've come to the end of our wonderful hour just chatting away. My final question to you guys is, where can we find your podcast? Where can we find the crowdfunding for Tales from the Old West? And where can we find out updates from your upcoming projects?
Right. Shall I go?
Yeah,
because you always muck up the web addresses.
Yeah, I know, you're better at
this.
The
social posts.
And obviously, Fiona, you'll be putting these in the show notes.
Of course.
If you want to find our podcast and you want to go to www.effectpodcast.org.
Effect with a K.
Oh, and effect with a K,
Effect is spelt the Swedish way, so spell it with a K, not a C.
Very good point. And if you want to find out about the game, sign up for announcements. We're really hoping to launch in early September, but nothing's set in stone yet. No. Mm-hmm. Yeah, keep in touch with us by joining our mailing list, which you can do at our fancy new Effect Publishing website, which is www.effect.publishing, all one word, .com. And there you can sign up to newsletters, and you can also get a link to our drive-through site where you can download our free Kickstart. And Fiona, I know we're ending here, but I just love the cover of our Kickstart.
Great, I really love it.
This is by a brilliant, relatively new to the scene artist called Malin Sanderberg. She's from Sweden. She got into doing art like this by playing Red Dead Redemption. And so
excellent.
We've got art by her and art from a more experienced artist at X Games Workshop called Thomas Elliott. Mm-hmm. I'm really promoting Malin's work now. She's doing a lot of colour spreads for us, which are going to be our chapter covers, and they are just gorgeous.
Yeah, I was going to say the cover is so, because it's obviously like sort of that idea of holding a gun and it's shooting off. It does look like a still from a film. Just like the way it just works. So yeah, I was like, that's very impressive. Not the one I meant, but like it's like, I know what this game is about from the cover as a result. This close up of a hand holding a gun, shooting, ready like in a quick draw, essentially. Really cool.
And in fact, you've corrected me there. I kept calling it quick start. It is a quick draw, of course, because that is thematically appropriate.
Well, I was going to say, again, one of the things I really liked about it was that quite a lot of the terminology and the verb words that you use for stuff is like, shooting, hidden, all that sort of thing. I just like, instantly, I'm like, I love stuff like that. And I'm like, as I'm reading it, I was like, I'd like to be doing some hidden or do some shooting, healing, all that sort of thing. So really like that as a result.
Yeah, cool.
Well, thank you guys so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you.
No, it's been brilliant. Thanks so much for having us on.
Thank you, Fiona. It's been great to see you again.
I'm hoping to do more of these special Q&A bonus episodes in future, including Q&As on the one-shots we've run here at What Am I Rolling? If you have a question or think of an RPG designer you'd like to see interviewed on this podcast, let us know. Our email address is whatamirollingpodcast@gmail.com. And that's it. Great. See you next time.